and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Druid's Circle of Stars class specialization from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. The Druids, through this circle, have managed to unlock the secrets of the stars, and are able to use their power to fuel their own spells and features. They have also found ways to record and secure this information in repositories of lore scattered all over the world, as well as craft one for themselves that they can carry around with them. I've indicated this in previous videos, but a Druid chooses their circle at level 2, giving the player some time to decide what circle they want to take before they commit to it. To assist you, I have created another video that deals with creating a base Druid class character, and I will provide the link to that video in the description below. So dropping level 2 in is going to trigger our class specialization selection. I'm going to choose Circle of Stars. Now we can go ahead and take a look at Star Map, the very first feature that your character is going to gain, and it is what defines your spell focus as well as grants your character some additional spells as a reward for selecting this class specialization. This feature provides you a table of example star maps that you can select or use for inspiration to create your own, and they will be used as your character's foci that will then be used to cast your spells and the various features that require them. Once crafted, the power granted by the cosmos now gives you the means to know and cast the guidance cantrip, and turn the Guiding Bolt spell into one you will always have prepared and will no longer use spell slots in order to cast it, though there is still a limit to the number of times that you can actually cast it. Because the Guiding Bolt spell can now be cast without the use of spell slots, you must make use of your character's proficiency bonus to track how many times you cast it. Now, in order for your character to be able to cast Guiding Bolt without the use of a spell slot, your character will need to complete a long rest in order to regain any spent uses. And finally, if your character happens to lose the map for some reason, whether it gets stolen or is otherwise destroyed, you're not going to be at a loss. You can take your character and spend an hour during a rest period, it could be either a short or a long rest, doesn't matter, in order to be able to craft yourself a new one. And what will happen is when you craft the new one, it will replace the old one, and if someone had taken that old one, it would destroy it. So if they were looking at it, holding it, whatever, and you completed the ritual to go through and create your new one, whatever they were holding in their hand would just disintegrate in front of their eyes. When you actually go through and create your star map, I'm just simply going to use a rolled one. I'm going to drag and drop that into my inventory, and it's just going to drop an item into there. I generally give these things maybe 2 pounds, or 0.2 of a pound, sorry. And in order for this to work, you have to be holding it. So in this case, I'm going to use the keyword held. Now that I have my spell foci, I can go back to my actions tab and I can pop these two things open. So the first one I'm going to deal with is the cantrip. I'm just literally going to drag and drop that right into my cantrips thing. But this one is going to require a little bit of forethought as to where I want it to go, because it is used differently. First off, it will automatically drop into this group. Now, character wizards typically create these kinds of spell groups, or at least they used to. I don't know if they do now, because I created this character quite a while ago. However, they might also just simply make use of the spells like this one is using, so this particular spell group. If this is the case, what you're going to want to do is this. Create a Circle of Stars power group. And it's going to essentially replace your ability of dragging the star map into place. The other thing you're going to want to ensure is that this is an abilities capability. And the reason for that is for your usage tracking. We want to ensure that, let's see, how many times? You can use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So right now, that is a 2. We want to go through and set up our quote-unquote daily uses of being 2. Even though this is a spell, I want to ensure that it is not. This is what we would essentially use, I should say, before we start making use of a spell slot. Now, to get it back, you have to complete a long rest in order for that to work. That's the reason why I set that as daily. And it says so. You must complete a long rest here in order to get that back. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that this is also a spell. Now, I am not entirely certain whether this is specifically a Druid spell. If it is, I'm going to take a look at our spellcasting group here and take a look at level 1 spells. and it is not. So we do not get to add this to our quote-unquote list of spells that we have down here. And I'm just going to simply delete that group. So Guiding Bolt in our case only is available to us, quote-unquote, as a feature usage, not as a direct spell. Also at level 2, your character is going to gain something called the Starry Form feature, and it gives you a new way to make use of your Wild Shape feature. Instead of changing into a beast, you will now take the form of one of 3 starry constellations, each of which will give your character different benefits. No matter what constellation you selected, while in this form, your character would glimmer in the dark, casting a bright light out to 10 feet while casting dim light out to an additional 10 feet, for a total of 20 feet in distance. This form, however, does not last as long as your typical Wild Shape feature, and it will only last for about 10 minutes before it will fade away. Now, as I stated, there are 3 constellations your character can select from, and they are the Archer, the Chalice, and the Dragon, as we can see down here at the bottom of the information sheet. The Archer option gives you the means to send a luminous arrow at a single creature that is within 60 feet of your character. It is a bonus action that you can make use of while your Starry Form lasts, but it cannot be used on the same turn you activated Starry Form. It can only be used in subsequent turns, and only while your Starry Form remains in place. The attack roll is a normal ranged attack roll, and if it hits the target, it will do 1d8 plus your character's wisdom modifier in radiant damage. So, there are a couple of things that I'm going to want to do in order to begin the setup of this particular feature. A, I'm going to want to ensure that I have a wild group feature set up. So or wild shape group, I should say. So I'm going to drop this into place, and I'm going to call this wild shape. And that is going to move this down here. I'm also going to set this up so that there are 2 daily uses, because that is the limit that you get initially when you go through and make use of this. You can use this feature twice, and you regain expended uses when you finish a short or long rest. Sorry, that's not daily uses, that is rest. So that will be rest. Excellent. That's even better. I'm then going to drop Starry Form into place, and I'm going to move that down into here. Now, the reason why I have done that is because with Wild Shape, and because Starry Form makes use of your Wild Shape, or quote-unquote in place of your Wild Shape, that means you only get to use an equal number of Starry Form features as you would Wild Shape. So, if I decide to make use of Wild Shape, I do this. Now I have that ability, but you'll notice that I've also used up one of the Wild Shape uses. That's because this group is linked. I also want to make sure that all the things in here are set up as a wisdom thing, although technically this one could be whatever is base, because if there's an attack roll in there, we don't want, we want abilities to use wisdom, but we want this to use base, so whatever is going to be typically used for ranged attack. Now, we already have the ranged attack set up, so if we make an attack roll with our Archer form, it's already there. We could then do 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier for damage, so it's 1d8 plus 4. That's because this is already set up and ready to go, so we don't even need to worry about setting up the Archer. The Chalice, on the other hand, is a feature that helps to extend your party's survivability by enabling additional healing whenever you cast a healing spell using a spell slot. In this case, your character or another ally that you've selected who is within 30 feet of your character can recover hit points equal to 1d8 plus your character's wisdom modifier. This can only be done on a single target, meaning that you can only apply healing to yourself or another ally, or creature if you want to. But we don't have to go through and set this up. We just have to make a minor adjustment to this particular effect here. And that is simply that it isn't necessarily self who gets the ability to do this. We want to be able to heal whoever it is, because we do have the option of adding the healing to ourselves or to another creature who is within 30 feet. And finally, the Dragon Constellation gives your character the means to treat intelligence and wisdom checks, as well as a constitution saving throw for a concentration check, as a value that is never lower than 10, meaning that if you roll a 9 on a d20, it will always be 10. Now, if you roll an 11 on your d20, then sadly that's going to remain as 11, or actually a good thing that it will remain 11. Now, this is before your character goes through and adds in any modifiers to the actual roll. So if you're making an intelligence-based saving throw and you roll a 3, you can bring that up to a 10 and then add in your intelligence modifier to that saving throw to bring it up to the final value. Unfortunately, though, that isn't something that we can actually set up in Fantasy Grounds. There's no way that I am aware of to set up a minimum value that a die roll can come through. So when our character reaches level 5, we are going to have an increase in our uses for Guiding Bolt. That's because our proficiency bonus is increased to 3. So we're going to want to make sure that we adjust that to 3 daily uses. At level 6, your character is going to gain access to the Cosmic Omen feature, and with this feature, it's one of the few ones that requires you to complete a long rest before your character can use it. Once your character completes that rest and decides to use this feature, you will need to roll a die, and it can be any die that you choose, or you can create a new die that will just simply give you a 1 or a 0. And it really doesn't much matter. What we're looking for here is whether the dice is going to roll an even number or an odd number. So we could very quickly do something like this, /DIE in our chat box, and just go 1d2. And that will create a custom dice. And we just drag and drop that into here so that we can just simply click and roll it. Now, what'll happen is, in fact, so it's going to give us either a 1 or a 2, depending on what we roll. So in this case, I've got 3 2s in a row. Come on. Give me something that's going to give me a 1. There we go. So now I got a 1. So with this, chances are you might skew your results a little bit better or a little bit weirdly. You might just want to simply take a die and roll it and see what number comes up, because you might have a little bit more in the way of variety. But it's entirely up to you. If you want to stick with odd even, this is a very good one to do. Or you could just simply go roll a die, and whether it's even, whether it's odd, that's going to dictate what you do next. If a dice rolls even, and it's called a wheel in this particular case, it will grant your character the means to react to other allies or creatures casting an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. It's best to use this creatures you're friendly with or allied with, because you roll a d6 as part of this reaction and give them that value as a bonus to add to their existing dice roll. For example, if a party member rolled a 9 on a d20 saving throw, you could react and roll your d6 die. Whatever value shows up as that roll can be added to the 9 to hopefully help that party member succeed on the saving throw they might have just failed. On the other hand, an odd value, called a woe, operates the same way as the wheel roll, but this time you want to use it on an enemy or a creature that you want to fail a saving throw, because it will be the value of your d6 roll that will get subtracted from their roll, potentially making them force a failure of the attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. The only requirement for either of these options is that the benefactor of the die roll has to be within 30 feet of your character's current location. Additionally, your character will only be able to use this a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus before they will have to complete a long rest to regain any spent uses. So that means we need to go ahead and add this to our Actions tab. Now, I'm going to drop this into place, and I'm going to add this to Circle of Stars. I'm then going to create 2 effects. So 1 and 2. I'm then going to call this Cosmic Omen, and I'm going to call this Wheel, semicolon, 1d6. But I want this to apply to an attack roll, so ATK colon 1d6. I'm going to copy that. Semicolon, we want saving throw, so save colon 1d6, semicolon, and we want check colon 1d6. I'm going to put a space there. And it's going to expire on their next roll. Doesn't matter which one they do, it's going to expire. Now, to add the subtraction, all we do is this. I'm going to copy and paste all of this and simply paste that into here, and I'm going to call this whoa. And then I'm simply going to add a minus symbol in front of each of these rolls. And I'm going to leave everything else set up, except I'm going to set up the expend on next roll. So now this is set up except for the number of uses. In our case, we have a character that has 3 potential uses. So I'm going to ensure that that gets modified to match what our Guiding Bolt is. And anytime we modify Guiding Bolt, we'll have to be sure to modify Cosmic Omen, because they're using the same quote-unquote stat. So how does this work in a combat situation? Well, I've gone ahead and I've rolled a d6 here, and I've gotten a 4. That means that for today, I have the ability to use Wheel. Now, what that means is that this Druid Circle of the Shepherd that I have here, let's say it's going to be their turn in a moment. I'm going to grant them the ability to use the wheel effect because I'm going to use my reaction to do this. So I'm going to apply that effect to whatever their roll they're going to do next. Now, if they're going to want it on their attack roll, okay, you have to let them know in advance. If they're going to want, or they're going to have to let you know in advance, I should say, because we've set this up so that it's going to give an additional 1d6 roll on whether it's their attack roll, their saving throw, or a check. We have to apply it just prior to them making that roll and just prior to them actually having that roll decided. So if they want to roll the attack roll, you could say, I'm going to assist you and give them this capability. That's how that's going to work. Now, I'm going to pop this character open on the other side, and I'm going to make an attack roll. Let's see, on that vampire. So let's target you. Now we can see that the 1d6 was rolled, and it didn't help in this particular case. And that is simply because, in relation to the die roll, if you still roll poorly and you get a poor roll on the additional 1d6 roll, you're going to roll badly. So in this case, I rolled a 2, had a 1, total of 9. That hurts. But that's how that works. Now let's say that I had rolled odd when I rolled the d6. So let's see if I can just get an odd value here. Yep. Oh. Interesting. That kind of was cantankered there. But anyway, now when it comes to where I apply this, I'm going to want to make use of the woe effect. And what I mean by that is that, let's say I want to interrupt this vampire as they're going on their turn. So I'm going to drop that into place. Vampire now has the ability to go. I'm going to attack our primary character, and I'm going to use the attack roll. We can see that we now have a 5 there, and it should be 17 minus 5, but seeing as they had a plus 9, they still managed to hit, because 17 plus 4 is 21. Now, how do you track over a long campaign that might take multiple weekends or multiple days to go through a single day before your next long rest? How do you track that? The trick that I use is I just type in what I last rolled there. That way I know which omen I would be making use of. If I rolled woe the next day, well, then I would roll this and change this around so that it was woe as opposed to wheel. And that's all I do. And all I would recommend somebody does. That way, over multiple sessions, you know which one was your last roll. Now, level 9 is where we gain our next proficiency bonus increase. So we're going to want to go back and adjust the number of uses that we have for both Cosmic Omen and Guiding Bolt to 4. And that gives us 4 pips. At level 10, our character is going to gain access to the Twinkling Constellations feature that is used to enhance your Starry form feature. The Archer Constellation now has an increase in damage dealt from 1d8 radiance damage to 2d8 radiance damage, while the Chalice's healing abilities has now also increased to 2d8. Both also have your wisdom modifiers added to the total values. The Dragon Constellation, on the other hand, is now granting your character the means to fly 20 feet as well as hover above the ground. And the final adjustment is that your character can now shift their starry form at the start of each turn, and it does not count as an action. It's considered to be a free action, if you will, meaning that you could start with the offensive aspects of the Archer, but quickly change your form to the Chalice the following turn to trigger your healing benefits during the difficult part of an encounter. And then later on in the combat rounds, you could then switch back to your Archer in order to maximize the amount of damage that things are now going to be receiving once things turn around for the party. So, we don't necessarily need to add this, but what we should do is adjust our Starry form damage here. So we're going to take this and we're going to add in an additional 1d8 to both of these. And that is literally the only adjustment we have to do when it comes to our wild shape thing. Now, let me just see if we get any additional uses at later levels. I don't think we do. No, you do not gain any additional uses at this particular point in time. I think that comes later on when you reach the Archdruid level. But having said that, when it comes to Twinkling constellations, you're definitely going to want to ensure that you add this to your actions tracker for the purposes of being able to show to the Dungeon Master that you are making use of the flying capability when using the Dragon constellation. Now, level 13 sees our proficiency bonus increase once again, so we're going to have to quickly adjust our Cosmic Omen capabilities and Guiding Bolt uses from 4 to 5. Finally, at level 14, your character gains the Full of Stars feature, which adds additional enhancements to your Starry form feature, if you will, on top of those gained from the Twinkling constellation feature. At this stage, your character will be able to take on an incorporeal form as a result and gain resistances to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. So let's go ahead and set this up. I'm going to drop this into place, and I'm going to move this into Circle of Stars. Even though it's adjusting what our Starry form is going to do, it's adding additional capabilities to our class overall. I'm going to create a new effect, and in this particular case, I want to state Full of Stars, semicolon, resist, colon, and then I want bludgeoning, comma, piercing, comma, slashing. And I generally recommend you don't put a space here, just in case. I unintentionally did that at habit. And it doesn't expire and it doesn't go away, but you have to have the Starry form active. So the only time this should be in place is when you're making use of Starry form. Now, when inside of a combat tracker situation, all you do is you just pop that into place. Oops, I should say that should be on yourself. There we go. Not on anybody else. You pop this into place when you've actually activated Starry form. And then as long as Starry form is around, which is about 10 minutes, then this will stick around. So I'm going to put a duration of 10 minutes on that just as a precaution, because it's activated as soon as you activate Starry form. And the last thing that we have to do is once our character reaches level 17, we will want to add in the final increase to the Guiding Bolt to 6, as well as to Cosmic Omen. And that literally completes everything that we have to do with in relation to the Circle of Stars Druid character. The Circle of Stars is definitely a different take on the Druid class, and I might even be interested to give this one a try during a short one-shot campaign to get a good feel for it, although I have seen the other stuff done around Wheel and have used something similar like that in other classes. I like that it can switch between offensive or defensive roles quite effectively at later levels, and this doesn't even take into account the Druid's own native features that you continue to gain as you level up. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular video, and I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.